Hi, everybody. I'm Sheldon Fetty. I'm an alcoholic. I love it when an area is so on fire that most people make it to the 2:30 meeting. It's supposed to be nap time, for crying out loud, right? Then again, I think most of you are here to see how on earth someone can talk for an entire hour about step 6 and 7. Right? It's like, we got to watch this car wreck happen. Yeah. It's 2 paragraphs in the book. I mean, for crying out loud, Bill didn't even give it enough respect to write more than a few sentences, for God's sakes. It's the flyover step, isn't it? I mean, if you're like me, I got done with my inventory, and God, I give Steve the real meat to dig into there in 4 and 5. There's a lot to talk about, right? And I come out of my inventory, and I've got this list of character defects, and I realize that really, I'm just a crappy guy. I mean, if you've done a good inventory, you have entered into the inventory with a list of people that secretly you believe owe you an amends. And you're hoping that your sponsor is going to somehow give you spiritual trickery where they will show up in your life afterwards properly ashamed of themselves and set matters straight. But you come out of this thing with a perspective of your behavior. I am judgmental. I have an opinion about everybody and everything. I think I know how people should act in any given situation, and usually they do it wrong. I am selfish and self-obsessed. I think only about me and what I'm going to get and how I'm going to get it. I am a liar. Even if I'm at my most honest, I'm a truth stretcher. I was at lunch today, and somebody's telling me a story, and I heard 2 or 3 words, didn't really pay attention to the rest, figured I knew what they were talking about, and embarrassed myself by saying that I knew what they talked about. I had no idea what they were talking about. Because I only need 10% of the information, and I make up the rest. Right? And I'm good at it. Right? I'm good at it. You give me 15% of the information, and I'm dangerous. I mean, it's just... So I'm a liar. I'm an exaggerator. I'm a thief. And I'm not really a thief when it comes to money. I've always been a good earner. It's not that but I'll steal your time. I'll steal your affection. I'll steal your self-esteem. I'll steal your security. I'm a thief. I'm just really not... And I come out of this inventory... that hopefully after step 5 with this list of stuff that is wrong with me and I'm just not a good guy, and my sponsor says, are you willing to have God remove all these defects of character? And I go, heck yeah. He can have them all. Good, we're done with step 6. Right. Step 7, I say the prayer and I get back to the sexy stuff of writing out the amends list. And I fly right over step 6 and 7. And I don't pay much attention to it, and I go on with my life. And the problem is, for me, is that you're still in my life. And so I come out of this inventory wanting to believe that I've become willing to have God remove these defects of character, wanting to believe that I've done some semblance of step 6, wanting to believe that this prayer that I waited an hour. I didn't really wait an hour. At the end of the 5th step where it says go home for an hour, right? Who really did an hour? Right? An hour is a long time. I did my steps a second time with a new sponsor, and he told me to wait an hour and call him like with a stopwatch on my phone. And I tell you, after about 26 minutes, I knew an hour was way too long for me to sit quietly. But even if you waited the whole hour, right? And then I said that prayer, and I know that God's going to take that stuff away from me, and I can go on with my life and be wonderful. The first thing that I do is I show back up at AA, and I notice a couple of people gossiping, right? You ever notice people gossiping in an AA meeting? If you're like me and you're at your most spiritual, you don't go join in the gossip. But what you do is you go, there they go. They're gossiping. I'm glad I'm not one of those gossipers. And I slip right into judgment, and I scour the room, and I look for another guy with his arms folded, and I know he's noticed. So I go up to him to talk to him about how everybody's gossiping. And ain't we glad that we don't do that no more, you know? I judge the judges and I gossip about the gossip. But that's the little stuff that I do, right? I show up at work. And I get to work and I notice that it seems like, my sponsors train me well. You get to work early, right? If you start work at 9 o'clock, that means you're at your desk to work at 9 o'clock, which was new information for me. What I thought that meant when you start work at 9 o'clock is if your car is in the parking lot by 9, you're on time, right? But apparently, according to my sponsor, you're supposed to be behind your desk ready to work, so 10 to 9 is the time of day that you get to work. I get to work, I notice nobody's there at 10 to 9. I notice nobody's working as hard as me. All right? I'm the only guy in this whole damn company that comes to work on time. Right? And then I know, and I don't know, nobody talks about how much they make, but I know that she can't afford all that jewelry on what I'm being paid. All right? So my head's now spinning that now they're taking advantage of me. Right? Now they're not paying me enough. They're not treating me with enough respect. God help me if somebody that works with me gets a promotion. Right? Because the only way that happens is if somebody's sleeping with somebody. If it was based on pure merit, I'd have gotten that promotion. And I start to hate the people who I'm working with. And I start to get uptight and anxious about my work. And my boss doesn't seem to treat me the way that I think he should treat me. I'm not given the respect. Anybody not respected at work, right? I'm not given the respect that I think I should get. And then I get home, and I'm married, and I get home, and dinner's not on the table. And that's bothersome, right? Because I don't say nothing, because you don't say nothing about that kind of stuff, because you don't want to have a fight, because she's just going to think you're nagging her. But for crying out loud, I've been working all day trying to put food on the table, pay for the roof, and I don't mean to think this stuff. My head just kind of starts thinking this stuff. And I got judged, right? And she, I said to my wife at the time, one time, I said, I'm not saying that it's hard living with you, but I didn't have no gray hair when we got married. None. She said it was 20 years ago. I guess that wasn't her fault. But I got judgment and I got opinions and I got all this, and I inventory this stuff, right? I go to my sponsor and I've got an inventory now. I've got a resentment list. It's a 10-step inventory, and it's a resentment list of the people at work for not working hard enough, for not paying me enough, for not giving me enough respect, for not showing up at work on time. All the stuff that's in my head, and I've worked through, and we'd work through the resentment. And you know what comes out at the other end? I've got these same character defects. I thought I was done with that. I'm judgmental still. Right? I'm insecure. I'm self-seeking and self-obsessed, and I'm worried only about me. I'm full of fear. At the end of every one of my character defects, what do they all boil down to? All right? We look for the outward expression of what really is just self-centered fear. I'm just afraid. I'm afraid I'm not going to get what I think I should deserve. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose something I already have. I'm afraid of your opinion of me, and I'm afraid that your opinion of me will be the same as my opinion of me, and I'm terrified that we'll be right, because that opinion's not a good opinion. And I inventory my wife, and it says I'm selfish. I don't think about what she goes through all day, about what it's like to raise a kid. I don't think about how hard she works. I don't think about all the things, right? And I come back with these character defects, that Sheldon is only worried about Sheldon. Sheldon is afraid that Sheldon's not going to get what he wants out of this world. And I go, well, Sheldon, are you willing to not behave that way anymore? Are you willing to have God? I revisit step 6. Are you willing to have God remove these? Oh, you bet I am. You bet I am. And I say the quick prayer to God, God, you take this stuff away from me now, you hear? And I go back about my day, and I get in traffic. Alcoholics are great in traffic, aren't we? I think George Carlin said it best about traffic, right? Everybody that's driving too slow is an idiot, and everybody that's driving too fast is an asshole, and I'm the only person on the road that knows how to drive, right? And that's how I drive. I was recommended early in sobriety not to put a circle and triangle on my car, right? That belongs to the spiritual people behind the wheel. That guys like me shouldn't have one of those on our car. And I get in traffic, and and I tell you, I'm about 3 years sober, and I go to my sponsor, and I'm really concerned. I'm staying sober, and I'm not thinking about drinking, and I really feel like the obsession's been removed, and I feel like I'm not safe, right? Where none of us are ever really safe, but I'm safer than I have ever been in respect to whether or not I'll drink again. But as a person, I feel like I'm getting worse. As a human being, I don't feel like I'm growing or getting better. As a human being, I feel like I am always, as the book says, in collision with someone or something. I have an opinion about everything. I know how people should act and behave. I know what they should do. I know when they're not doing it. I'd always had this skill, but I've refined the skill of knowing what people are thinking. All right? I've become an expert mind reader. My job is painful and difficult. My marriage is hard. My home group. Right? I mean, when people start to share, I know what they're going to say. All right? Oh, Mr. Grateful's going to tell us how wonderful his life is. I can't wait, you know. And here's E.O. Everything's good, right? E.O.'s always in the home group, you know. And the guy with his AA resume. No, I didn't judge him because that was me. I was the guy with the resume, right? I'm going to this many meetings and this many detoxes, and I've sponsored this many guys. Am I the only person, by the way, that's ever sat in his home group and counted how many guys he sponsors, and then counted how many guys the other guys sponsor, and you only feel like you win if you sponsor more guys than your running mates, right? I'm the only guy that's ever done that, I know. Right? But so I'm uncomfortable at work, I'm uncomfortable at home, I'm uncomfortable in my home group, I'm uncomfortable when I'm in traffic, I'm just uncomfortable. And I go to my sponsor and I tell him I think I'm getting worse. And he said a very kind thing. He said, you know, I've been watching you the last 3 years, and you're not perfect. Jennifer talked about the butterfly and the cocoon. You're not perfect. But you're better than you were when you came here. And he said that part of the problem, and one of the things that was going on with me, was that when I was brand new when I first got here, I didn't look at all to see what my behavior was. So when I first got here, there was no appreciation for my selfish, self-centered, dishonest, my fear, my manipulation, my dishonesty, none of that stuff. I didn't care. I was just going through life, right, trying to get my own way. And you get sober a couple of years, and you've done an inventory, and you've done a little bit of 10-step work and a little 11-step work, and boy, I just started to notice, is what he told me. He said, you're a little better than you were, you got a long way to go, but you're starting to notice your behavior, and that can be painful. And I went away thinking, okay, I can take that. But then my life remains difficult, and I'm about 4 years sober, and I show up at his house, and I'm just like everything's wrong, right? Like now I'm starting to get concerned for my sobriety because I wake up in the morning and the gut is tied in a knot. And I go out the house and everything seems to irritate me and everyone seems to irritate me and everything's getting on my nerves and my head is giving me conversations about all the stuff that's wrong and I'm just right? And I show up at his house and I pound on the door and he opens the door and he goes, oh my God, I know that look. That's the Sheldon can't manage his own life look. You better come inside. And we talked for a little bit. And he said to me the darndest thing. It upset me. He said, you know what I think? I think you're having a step 6 problem. Well, I was offended. I'd made about a third of my amends. I was doing 10 and 11 on a semi-regular basis. I was sponsoring guys. So I said to him, I'm done with step 6. And he laughed. He thought it was one of the funniest things that he had ever heard. And he said something to me that stuck with me. I don't think I really understood it at the time. But what he said to me was, he said, the story of his sobriety may well be step 1, but the story of his serenity was absolutely step 6. Why did Bill only write 2 paragraphs on this step that I have come to learn is the thing that drives my success or failure? It seems not only in AA, but in the world. What is the purpose of an inventory, right? We write this 4-step inventory, and I know that when you're new, it feels like it's punishment for your alcoholism, right? What we're going to do is we're going to spend several days or weeks, or God help some of you months, right? The biggest lie in AA, I'm working on my 4th step, right? Don't say that to me unless you have a piece of paper and a pen, right? Because what you're doing is you're thinking about writing your 4th step. You're talking with your friends about writing your 4th step. You're fantasizing about what it might be like to write, but you ain't writing your 4th step, right? But we finally summon up the courage for the 3 or 4 hours that it actually takes to write the inventory. What are we doing it for? Are we doing it so we can feel guilty about our past behavior? I don't think so. I mean, that smells a little bit of some of the religions that I know 10 or 15% about and have made up the rest. Right? That I'm going to write this inventory so I can beat myself up for being such a loser. But that's not the purpose of the inventory, I don't believe. I believe that from the inventory comes some amends that clearly I need to make, that there are people whom I have hurt, and that clearly needs to be repaired. And if I'm going to have any kind of a good, solid spiritual foundation in this world, that mess needs to be cleaned up. But that's not the purpose, the way I see it, for writing the inventory. The purpose for writing the inventory is for me to see how I behave based on my instincts, based on the selfish, dishonest, self-seeking fear, what my behavior has been like, and is it working? I'm miserable. I can't quit drinking. I am separated from family, friends, associates. I really have only a couple of people in the world that are close to me, and most of them look at me with pity. I am not succeeding at the game of life. I am resentful, and I am afraid. And my sexual behavior, the fun is gone, because now it's about jealousy, suspicion, bitterness, and the like. It's no longer about a physical act. It's about power and control. And so I come out of this inventory with this information, not to beat myself up, but so I can look at it and see that it doesn't work, and how am I going to live my life in the future? How would I like my life to work? Why am I doing step 10 in the inventory in step 10? I'm doing it to check, to make sure that I am in fact living my life not the way I used to, and I'm disappointed to find out in many cases that I am, but I'm checking to see if I have adopted these spiritual principles that my sponsor's been talking to me about coming out of the inventory. Inventory is so important. But what is inventory on its own? Self-knowledge. Isn't that the only thing I gain from step 4 and 5 is self-knowledge? From step 10, when I do inventory in step 10, isn't the only thing that I do is I gain more insight into the wonderful patheticness of Sheldon, right? I mean, I've never come out of an inventory. Maybe you have. I'm 25 years sober. Maybe at 28 years sober, I'll come out of an inventory going, man, I'm just killing it, aren't I? Right? But in these first 25 years of inventory, I've always come out of the inventory going, oh my God, I did it again. I'm still doing it, and I have plans to do more of it next week. I got some of this stuff on the schedule, for God's sakes. And if all it is self-knowledge, what does self-knowledge avail us? Self-knowledge avails us nothing. It is of no value. What am I trying to learn? What am I trying to figure out? What is it that I'm trying to ascertain from all the inventory that I do, whether it's from the 4-step inventory or from the 10 and 11th inventory? What I'm trying to ascertain is, what is it I need to go to God with? What is it that I seem to continuously fail at, that I am powerless over, other than alcohol? All right, 12 and 12 talks about the only reason that I can't give up everything entirely other than alcohol is because alcohol nearly killed me, and these other character defects, not only do they not always nearly kill me, sometimes they're a lot of fun. All right? Sometimes here's what's frightening about my character defects. Sometimes my anger will get me my own way. Right? When he talks about in 60 through 63, where it says that sometimes we're kind, virtuous, somebody else can quote it later, right? Or egotistical, whatever, right? But as most humans, we're likely to have varied traits. Sometimes that stuff works, right? But as in war, the victor only seems to win, because later, obviously, I end up with that, right? And I don't end up with it for the spiritual reason of, oh my gosh, I just had terrible behavior. I end up with it because you retaliate. I've hurt you seemingly without provocation. Or, if you're like me, this is one of my biggest character defects. I will set for you, without your permission, a goalpost of how you should behave. Right? I will write a list of things you should do, how you should do them, right? If you pass the test, then you are a good person in my life. Now, I will not discuss with you what goes on the list. All right? The list requires no input at all. Right? Nor approval. Nor do I even give it to you. Right? It would be screwed up, but at least you'd have a fighting chance. So I said, Ben, from now on, when it comes to dealing with me, this is what's acceptable. Right? But I don't even do that. I make Ben guess how he's supposed to treat me, right? And then I got this, and if you don't line up against it, then I get angst and uncomfortable and separation and upset and anxiety. And if you do it, well, I will know for sure the list was not long enough. If you're able to meet the criteria need to change. Now, I don't do any of this consciously, but it is the way that my unconscious life works, which is why I'm constantly in separation and angst, which is why even though when I came out of my 4-step, I knew that judgment, self-centeredness, self-centered fear, dishonesty, I knew that all of these things, the stealing, the manipulation, I knew that all of these things, this long list of character defects, I knew they were bad and I should never do them again. And then I did them again. And then I did them again so many times that some of you guys, I do enough inventory, but I know some people, my friend in Vegas calls them scribblers. Right? I know some people that just inventory and inventory and inventory and inventory. And they have tons of self-knowledge. Right? When I gain self-knowledge, really all I end up with is depression. Because what happens to me is that I really know. Now I'm certain I shouldn't live like that. But I do. I got to tell you, it is a little screwed up, and I feel bad sharing this in Las Vegas, in Sin City, but here in the middle of the Bible Belt, right? I'm a little nervous to share this with you, good people, because I know you're better than my neighbors, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. I got to tell you, I'm a little mad at God. I am. I'm a little. You know why? Because He's God. Which means He could do anything He wants. Right? And I've been begging him for 25 years to take away certain character defects that he don't take away, and I'm telling you, it ain't right. I'm a good AA member. I am. I go to my home group. If I'm in Las Vegas on a Thursday night at 7 o'clock, you will find me at the meeting space every single Thursday. And I got a commitment there. I sign the court cards. It's even an invisible commitment that only the really, really sick newcomer knows because he reads my name. Nobody else sees me do nothing. Right? It's a good commitment for a guy like me. I sponsor a handful of guys. I do. I got guys call me all day long. I'm a couple hours a day on the phone with guys I sponsor. I am. You know, I pray. I dabble in meditation. Right? I do. I don't drink. I mean, I'm a good AA member. And I've been asking God for 25 years. Would you stop me from opening my mouth and putting my foot in it and hurting my friends? And you would think by now he would have done it. So I'm a little mad, to be honest. And then you get thinking about that. Why? And I don't profess to know the mind of God, for crying out loud, but they say, whoever they are, they say that he made us in his image, right? Or did we make him in our image? I forget. But it's one of those. There's something about him and us and images in there somewhere. So I start thinking, okay, if God help us all, let's pretend I'm God, right? Why would I let Sheldon suffer with these character defects? Why is it when I go to him and I say, God, take away step 7, take away these characters, why am I not driven pure? And you know what I think the truth is behind that? I think it's the greatest gift that he gives me. I think it's the greatest gift that he gives me. Because you know what a guy with an ego like mine would do if he was, you're wonderful? You know what the first thing would happen? I'd quit praying. I wouldn't need God no more, would I? All right? I wouldn't need God. I'd quit trying to help you because I already got mine. All right? I'd quit trying to help you. That home group's fun and everything, but every week's a little bit of a... Yeah, it's just too much, isn't it? It's just too much. And I'm only going to, from now on, sponsor people that I like. I'm only going to sponsor people that take direction. Wow. That'd free up some of my time, wouldn't it? What is the story of my life and the story of my relationship with God? And I got to tell you, I'm not proud of this, but I want to tell you, I want to be as vulnerable with you as I possibly can be. Right? Because I take this gift that the speakers and I share that come to the podium and do this is not a gift of insight, although sometimes it may sound like that. It is not a gift of deep spiritual connection. Trust me, I know most of these guys. Right? The only gift we have is the ability to string words together and make them sound pretty. We are storytellers. And I want to tell you my real story, all right? Not the story that I think you should hear. And the truth about me is that when people come up to the podium and they tell you their story about their spiritual connection with God, I get a little jealous. Because I'm not that lit up, not that turned on, not that plugged in, not all the time. Sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes I feel like I'm soaking wet, swimming in the Spirit. But other times, man, I feel like I'm bone dry. Right? I feel like I'm lost and cut off and alone. And what is it that drives me back to God? What is it that keeps me striving to be connected with Him? It is my character defects. It is my struggles. I tell you, I'm gonna do two crazy things in the Bible Belt. I'm gonna read you something about Buddhist tradition, because when I read this, it just, and I'm not a Buddhist. I tried to be a Buddhist. I did. I'm actually my family. I turned my back on the faith years ago, but actually I was born into a Jewish home, and so I tried to be a Jew-boo. That's what I tried to be, but I'm not even committed enough to be the Jew part of the boo. So I had to not. But this is a great Buddhist thing that just speaks to me about the struggle of step 6 in the Buddhist tradition. Difficulties are considered to be so important to a life of growth and peace that a Tibetan prayer actually asks for them. All right? Now, we spend our lives asking for them to be removed. But there are some faiths where they actually ask them, grant that I may be given appropriate difficulties and suffering on this journey, so that my heart may be truly awakened, and my practice of liberation and universal compassion may be truly filled. The writer went on to say it is felt that when life is too easy, there are too few opportunities for genuine growth. And they say, no mud, no lotus. That it is the struggles in life that God gives me that draw me closer to Him. And for those struggles, I should have gratitude and I should have appreciation, even though they suck. So what is a guy to do? What is a guy to do that has this life where he finds himself easily irritated by people, right? Listen, I don't only take my life personally. That would be terrible. I take your life personally, right? If you do something and you didn't check with me first, I feel like I am slighted, right? I mean, I just do, right? What is a guy to do that is always keenly aware of everybody and their actions, thinks he can read their minds, is always worried that he's not going to get his own, is full of judgment, and has opinions about everything? What is that guy to do? And there's some great folklore in AA of stuff that we can do. And one of my favorite things, and I tell you, I am not knocking this. I think you should do it. I tried it as a great practice. But they say that if you find that one of your character defects is that you are a liar, say, well, you should figure out what the opposite of a liar is, right? Which is become a truth teller, right? And then you should act more truthfully as your outward expression of step 6, so God can fill the void of the lies and give you which sounds great, other than to me, what that sounds more like is cause and effect, and it sounds like I'm using my own power, is what it sounds like, right? If you have the character defect of anger, right, you should force yourself to be kind. But most people can identify when you say, no, it doesn't bother me at all, right? We get seen through. It's a great practice. It is a great idea to try and limit the external evidence of your character defects. My former sponsor used to say that restraint of pen and tongue may not be the most spiritual action, but it does cut down on the amends. And I believe that that is true. I believe that that is true. But in practical application. So in step 3 we say, I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, right? In step 3 we say that God, right? I love the fact that it says to do with me and build with me. Do with me right now. Build with me for the future. That I'm going to turn it all over to you, Pops, and I'm going to give it to you, right? But if you've ever been at a newcomer meeting, maybe in Tennessee they tell this joke too. In Vegas they used to say it all the time. You got 2 frogs on a log, right? And one of them frogs decides to jump off. How many frogs are on the log, right? And the newcomer goes, well, 1, right? And no, Sparky, it was only a decision. There are still 2 frogs on the log. But what I would say is that if that frog ever took step 6, you'd hear a splash. What is step 6 really, other than me carrying out the action of step 3? Step 6 is the step where you're set up to fail. It's the failure step. You can't do it. It's not possible. So it's kind of funny, right? Step 7 says, humbly ask God to remove our short. So everywhere else in the book, there's cause and effect. It says, basically, this is how you should feel. This is what you're going to do, and this will be the result. Step 7 says, humbly ask Him, and it never tells you where to get humble. Right? But that humility comes from a combination of step 6 and step 10 and some more inventory in 11, where I learned that I just can't. I did it again. So what does step 6 look like for me? On a good day, step 6 looks like this. I'm going along and I'm thinking to myself, you know that guy at the meeting? God, I'm doing it again. God, I'm doing it again. Take that noise out of my head. You know what work? What about work? God, I got this job that pays all my bills, and I've done plenty of stuff they should have fired me for, and they haven't. God, fill me with some gratitude for my job. That the action of step 6 is because of inventory, we should be well enough trained. And I'm not talking to the brand new people. I'm talking to the guys that have been around, the gals that have been around for a little while. We should be well enough trained to identify the crazy. Right? I know what spiritual principles are. And I know that when I'm getting, as I do, judgmental, angry, gossipy. You know, it's funny to see Don sitting here in the front line. Don and I are very close friends. We talk all the time. Don doesn't gossip. Do not miss it. He listens to me gossip from time to time, right? I will gossip, right? And I know it's wrong. I know when the behavior begins because of inventory and life in AA. When the 12 and 12 says that this is the step that separates the men from the boys, what I believe Bill is hinting at is that when I notice, do I stop in prayer or do I continue on? Because continuing on feels powerful. Continuing on feels like I got some control. Right? Continuing on feeds the ego. And it's not like it worked. Like if it worked, when I showed up at my sponsor's house that day, 4 years sober, with the Sheldon Can't Manage His Own Life look, he would have said to me, you know, all of this stuff seems like it's working for you. I recommend you keep doing it. Right? But that wasn't the end of our conversation, because I end up with that angst and that separation and that loneliness and that dirty feeling. And so what I have learned to try and do, boy, and these are such weak words, what I've learned to try and do, there is no try, there is only do. Yeah, okay, sure. What I have learned to try and do, right, is to try to catch myself and minimize the damage that I do when those feelings and emotions and drives and desires come up. And then, as I notice them and I catch them, I become willing to give them to God. And then I do my own version of a 7-step prayer. In that moment, Pops, I'm doing it again. Pops, I'm doing it again. Take it from me. This is not helpful to me, your kids, you, anybody. Take it from me. That 7-step prayer says, take from me all the good and the bad. Why does it say that? That's not fair. I mean, I just did an inventory. I know there's not that much good. Can't you at least leave me with that, for crying out loud? Take away the good and the bad. The problem in my life is I don't know what's good and I don't know what's bad. When I was new, living my life, I clearly thought that hookers and crack were good. Turns out they were bad. So I give God everything. I give God everything, and I let Him I trust. I don't let. I don't ask. I trust that He's going to give me back the things in my life in a greater quantity that can be helpful to you and to His kids. You know, I told you I'm a storyteller, and I have an ability to communicate. But I will tell you in my personal life, it has caused me plenty of problems. It has. I tell inappropriate jokes to the wrong people at the wrong time. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of being in a group of 10 people and you say something and only 3 are laughing and the other 2, it's that embarrassed, right? And you look around and you're like, oh boy, did it again, right? I'm going to do it again, God. So what does all of this mean to me? So the book says that we practice spiritual progress. We never claim spiritual perfection. I think that there is a subtle instruction there for me to identify what perfection would look like. Right? That I should have a picture of what my behavior would be like if I could pull this AA stuff off. Right? So I plant the flag far in the distance of what perfection would look like, knowing I'll never get there. It's kind of like chasing the end of a rainbow, right? You got kids, the rainbow, throw them in the car, go chase the end of the rainbow. It's hysterical because you never get there, right? Perfection is like the end of the rainbow. But that it is my job to ask God through His help and through the humility of failure of these things to try and march closer towards that mark of perfection. The book also warns that we don't drift into morbid worry or reflection, right? We don't beat ourselves up because, you know how I know I'm supposed to be flawed? Because I'm flawed, right? Because God don't make no junk and God made me, and I know that with all of my wacky weirdness, I am, trying to be the best version of Sheldon that God made, and thankfully He didn't make too many of us. He's got a few more better models out there in the world than this model. But I'm supposed to be a little bit broken. I'm perfectly human or imperfectly human, as the author says. Right? I'm broken a little bit. My strangest arrogance I do in AA. You'll hear me. I've said it before. I love you come to the podium and you go, well, this is what I used to be like 3 years ago. I don't do that kind of stuff anymore. 3 years ago, I used to be like that, right? I'm like that now, all right? I'm just like that now. I'll tell you a little bit of a story of the last couple of years of my life because it has been a step 6 journey. 2017. I got sober July 17th of 1996. So 2017, I'm 21 years sober, somewhere in the gap there. And this is the point of the story, by the way, where the girls are starting to think I'm kind of nice and you're about to hate me. But that's okay. I'm going to tell you the story anyway. So 2017, I'm married for 20 years. And she's an amazing woman. And I don't want anybody to take anything from this that she's not. But we were married too long, if that's possible. And the marriage had been over for 10 years. And I had resided and decided that I was going to stay in an unhappy marriage, and that was what I was going to do. And then this girl smiled at me, and I didn't have the ability. I wished, in hindsight, I have looked back. I talked to friends of mine who said, before it happened, they said, well, you shouldn't do that. That's really, really bad. And I said, I know I shouldn't do it. I'm not going to. And then I did it. And the marriage fell apart, obviously, because I cheated on my wife, and I did that. And if you would have asked me 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years before that happened, if it was possible, I would have told you absolutely not. In judgment, when other people had that type of behavior, I would have said, well, if they'd done enough inventory or prayed deeply enough, They needed to sponsor more people. Wrong home group is what causes infidelity, right? I would have had a lot. I would have told you why they did that. What the failing in their AA program was. But I did that. 2018, I'm in business with a guy, and I'm trying to work through the divorce. I'm in business with a guy who was he provided the money to open the business. It was very kind of him, but he didn't understand the business. He got scared, and he emptied the bank account. And so now I'm going to work, and there's no money in the bank account, and it costs about $70,000 a month to operate this business. And we're new. We're not making that kind of money, and I don't know what to do. And I'm going through this divorce, and I got this business partner that's going, and it's very difficult. And then in the end of 2018, the government decided to rebuild the road in front of my dealership. And when I say rebuild, what I mean is it's a car dealership. We require cars. They closed the road is what they did. They said, well, we're going to, for a year, we're going to work on this. And it made things even more difficult. And then, of course, in 2020, we all got the sniffles. And COVID came along, and then they shut down my business altogether. And now I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm dealing with the embarrassment and the shame because my behavior was improper, and I'm dealing with that. I changed home groups and sponsors. A lot of stuff happened. I'm dealing with all that in the middle of all this. And then I got this partner that he's dribbling the money back in, but he's very difficult. And the business, I wanted to walk away so many times. My sponsor told me that you go to work every day and you check the door, and if the landlord hasn't bolted it closed because you've been kicked out, you do your best you can that day to work. And every day you'll know when you're supposed to close. Other people that can make those decisions will have locked the door. That's a hard way to go to work. And I went to work, and I did that. And then they shut down the road, and then COVID happened. And then I was driving to work the second or third week of COVID. We were closed, but I was going to go meet a client there to see if we could do something by appointment only. And on my way to work, I had a stroke driving my car. I felt it coming on. I pulled over in the parking lot. I was blessed. I called my girlfriend, told her I wasn't feeling well, come and get me. I had a stroke. The stroke caused a seizure. The seizure caused the L4 vertebrae in my spine to explode. And I came to in a hospital, and it was weird, man. I mean, it's been a weird couple of years, right? And so now, and some of it is self-imposed crisis that I could have postponed or evaded, and some of it not so much. And I'm laying in this bed in my apartment, and I can't walk because they told me that if I move wrong, I'll be in a wheelchair, and they won't fix my back because they don't know if I'll have a stroke on the table or a seizure after the surgery, and they have to figure out why I'm having strokes and seizures. They won't work on my back, and I'm bedridden, and I got a business that's falling apart, and we're all dealing with the COVID stuff, and it's just, I've got the embarrassment and the shame of the marriage and the business partner that's making me crazy, and I'm laying in the bed, and boy, and I go into prayer, because I don't know where else to go. July of 96, at my second or third meeting, a guy asked me a question. And this was the question he asked me. He said, what do you want out of AA? And I didn't know how to answer him. Stay sober, I guess. I didn't know how to answer it. What do I want out of AA? If I were able to answer him, this is what I would have said. I would have said, I would like to know that it is possible for me to not drink again. I've been drinking again every single time for the last 3 years. I get a week or two. I never left AA. I relapsed 100+ times. I would like to know that I can quit drinking. And if I can quit drinking, what that's going to mean is it's going to have to mean that I'm going to be comfortable in my own skin most of the time when I'm not drinking. And for that to happen, a miracle is going to have to occur, which I suppose what that means is I'm going to have to believe in a God that I don't believe in. So I guess what I really want to know is that AA works. Because what AA works would mean, and I didn't have the words to say this to him, I just wept is what I did. But for AA to work, what that would mean is that I would be able to stay sober and comfortable in my own skin one day at a time without being driven back to drink by the demons that have been owning me. And that would require a miracle. And for miracles to happen, God has to exist. So what I want to know is AA works. God exists. AA works. That's what I want to know. And I'm laying in this bed 25 years later, 24 years later. It started in my toes. You sound weird when you talk about spiritual experiences. Like, I think Wilson's white light experience, many of us have had experiences like that. They're not our only spiritual experience, much like that wasn't Bill's only spiritual experience. But I got one. I've had a couple. I had one. Crawled up my legs. It was purple. It wasn't white light, it was purple. And I felt calm as it went over me, and all the fear went away. And I laid in that bed, and I just felt at peace. A few days later, a guy, sponsor, I was telling him the story, and he asked me, he said, "What? You got to give me a better explanation. That just sounds stupid." And I thought about it, and this is what I said to him. I said, laying in that bed, I knew something. I knew AA worked. And I knew God was real. I knew it was going to be okay. I knew that there was a power behind me in this universe stronger than any power or any problem that was in front of me. I didn't know what it was going to look like. Business-wise, didn't know. Health-wise, didn't know. Relationship-wise, didn't know. Didn't know any of it. Now, strangely enough, my business is still open. We're not thriving. We're surviving. All right? My health seems to be pretty good. And I'm getting married next month on April 18th. How crazy is that shit? I mean, the world's just insane, right? God's just, it's a goofy deal, right? What does all this have to do with step 6? This is only what I think. It is not based in anything other than my experience, and you can take it for what you like. But this is what I think. Why did Bill only write 2 paragraphs on step 6 and 7? I don't think he did. I think he wrote an entire book. I think there was just nothing left to say. I think everything we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, the reason 6 and 7 are in the center. A friend of mine, when he does a talk on 6 and 7, talks about the fulcrum points. 6 and 7 are like the place for the balance beam, where the seesaw, if you like, balances in the middle. Why they're the central steps. What's funny is they could have been, they're the only step that could have been anywhere, right? They could fit anywhere. Why are they in the middle? Because it's everything we do. Step 1. I admit that I am powerless over alcohol. My life is unmanageable. I admit that I am broken. There is a problem that requires a solution. I don't know this yet, but that solution will be step 6. I start to look for that power. I start to look for this power in step 2 that will allow me to be restored to sanity. And that power will be discovered in step 6. In step 3, I make a decision that later I'll do step 6. In 4 and 5, I write a list of everything I have ever done when I am not living in step 6. And then I arrive in step 6 and 7. In 8 and 9, I make amends and clear up the mess I have made by not living in step 6 and 7. In 10 and 11, I stop and check and make sure, sometimes during the day, sometimes at night before I crash, I check and make sure I'm living in 6 and 7. And then in step 12, I go look for a guy, as the poet says, whose hand will only open to his touch that I can place on the door that will allow him to find his step 6 and 7. It is everything we do. We are here to become willing to have God remove all of our defects of character and then to humbly ask Him to do so. Thank you for my life.